The upcoming week is going to be an eventful one for those involved in disaster management. The Multi-Hazard Early Warning and Disaster Risk Reduction International Symposium is scheduled to be held from the 14th to the 16th of December 2020. To speak about the event, I have here with me
Mrs. Sunil Javira, Director Preparedness and Planning at the DMC.
and Richard Hay, Professor of Disaster Resilience and Co-Director of the University of Huddersfield Global Disaster Resilience Center in the United Kingdom, Dilanthi Amaratunga, Professor of Disaster Risk Reduction at the University of Huddersfield in the United Kingdom. To speak further about the event, I would now focus my attention.
Mr. Sunil Javira, Director Preparedness and Planning, DMC. Mr. Javira, tell me, what is this event?
It is an international symposium on multi-hazard early warning and disaster risk reduction, which will be held in visual event from 14 to 16 December launch from BMICH in Colombo. This symposium gives an excellent opportunity for professionals of various backgrounds from around the world involved in disaster risk reduction activities to exchange their knowledge, experience, and ideas. And also, it provides an opportunity to promote the availability and application of research, science, and technology to support the implementation of the Sendai Framework for Disaster Reduction 2015 to 2030 and to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. This three-day visual event will start with the inaugural session, which will start tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. and will be held at the BMS and followed by the keynote address and plenary session on the topic of science, policy and practice, risk analysis, early warning system, and emergency operations center perspective from the Asian countries. The then 2 day, that is 14 December 2020, will comprise of keynote address, followed by plenary session, two on the integrating epidemic and pandemic preparedness into disaster risk reduction, and plenary session 3 on nature-based solution for resilient future.
Shifting my attention to our guests joining us via Zoom technology, Dilanthi Amaratunga, Professor of Disaster Risk Reduction at the University of Huddersfield. Professor Amaratunga, could you tell us about the purpose of this international symposium, how relevant and timely it is for Sri Lanka?
Thank you very much, Asra. Thank you very much for having me on this program. So as a scientist who have been working with Sri Lanka over the last 20 years, it is my pleasure to join Sri Lanka's Disaster Management Center in co-organizing this international symposium on multi-hazard early warning and disaster risk reduction. Our aim has always been to see an event that brings together actors from across policy, practice, and science. If you see to go back to global 2015 Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, which is actually the blueprint for disaster risk reduction from 2015 to 2030, has a much enhanced role for science and knowledge, including explicit mention of co-production. So in this, the role of academia, science, and research entities are specifically recognized, and they are encouraged to focus on disaster risk factors and scenarios, including emerging disaster risk in the medium and long term, and to increase research for regional, national, local applications. And also science is called to action, be it in education and training, post-disaster reviews, research into disaster response, or early warning systems. Modeling and early warning are specially emphasized, but there is also recognition of wider social processes. There is also renewed emphasis on training, and within this, on integrated approaches. And the need for academia, science, and research entities to co-produce new knowledge is greater than ever. The COVID-19 pandemic that we all are facing at the moment has exposed the multi-hazard threats we face and the complex nature of risk, which is interconnected and transboundary. It has also challenged our existing disaster and emergency management policies and strategies. It will be very important because of that to leverage science and technology to address the challenges posed by emerging threats such as COVID-19, but also systemic risk more broadly. Decision making must be informed by science. Effective communication of science will also be vital to bring trust and also counter the type of disinformation that has been undermining policy responses and amplifying distrust and concern among citizens. So in this context, I'm very glad and very proud to see that Sri Lanka's Disaster Management Center has recognized this need and is proactively working with building these links in disaster risk reduction in Sri Lanka. This international symposium is just one example in supporting this cause.
Professor Richard Hay, why do you think is it important that we create awareness about the situation internationally?
I think I've been working with Sri Lanka since 2005, and indeed this is the first year that I've not visited the country since that time. I know better than most people the benefits of working with people internationally, and I think we've seen this year more than ever before that countries are interconnected, and disaster risk, and indeed the pandemic in particular, it doesn't respect administrative boundaries within countries or indeed between countries. So we need to really see cooperation internationally. Now, I think Sri Lanka has experienced this after the Indian Ocean tsunami back in 2004. And there, at that time, we saw 28 countries around the Indian Ocean come together with international support from around the world to develop an effective early warning system. And if we take Sri Lanka as an example, it receives information from Indonesia, India, Australia, and it uses that information to inform its decisions at the national level. And at the symposium that's being organized, we have experts from India and Indonesia who are coming together to share their experiences of how the warning systems work at the national level and how warnings are disseminated to communities at risk. So that type of knowledge sharing is very important. But I think also that the current pandemic has revealed very well how much there is to learn between countries. Across the world, we've seen a wide range of measures being adopted, and I think for a variety of reasons that we've yet to fully understand, countries are experiencing very different infection levels, very different death levels. So some of this might be explained by climatic factors or demographic profiles, but we also need to examine what mitigation and preparedness measures have been adopted within countries and see how effective they've been that might explain some of those differences. So it does seem that countries that have recent experiences of epidemics and pandemics have fared somewhat better. They've used that experience to help them manage this current situation. So we can all benefit from that type of international knowledge exchange. We've also seen that COVID-19 has increased poverty and famine. It's undermined job security, and the common connection in this is risk. And in an interconnected world that we have, no one country, no one agenda can address a crisis of this scale alone. But we shouldn't just think about the pandemic. An earthquake off the coast of Indonesia can cause a mass casualty event in Thailand or Sri Lanka. Forest fires in the Amazon could cause poor air quality here in Europe. So a coordinated approach is required that addresses these different challenges. And I think this symposium really is an ideal opportunity to bring together scientists, policymakers, practitioners from around the world to share those experiences and cooperate more in the future. And I'm very impressed that the Disaster Management Centre in Sri Lanka has recognised this need and has taken the leadership in organising the event.
International Symposium on Multi-Hazard Early Warning and Disaster Risk Reduction to promote the availability and application of research, science and technology to support implementation of Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction 2015 to 2030.
Large number of participants from around the world will virtually join the symposium with over 100 presenters.
From the 14th to the 16th of December 2020, virtual conference launched from BMICH, Colombo, Sri Lanka. Media partner, Newsfirst.